14 Hollywood men who defied age gaps for love. #6. Ended in complete disaster. In the glittering, youth-obsessed world of Hollywood, the standard narrative is entirely predictable. Aging male superstars routinely trade their partners for women half their age. But what happens when the script is completely flipped? Behind the velvet ropes of the entertainment industry lies a deeply fascinating, rarely discussed reality where some of the world's most powerful, desirable men actively chose to marry women significantly older than themselves. While the tabloid media relentlessly mocked them and industry insiders predicted rapid divorces, these men risked their public images to follow their hearts. However, the outcomes of these unconventional unions are as drastically different as the stars themselves. While some found an unshakable, grounding force that built massive billionaire dynasties, others were utterly consumed by vicious, reputation-destroying divorces, intense power struggles, and public humiliation. Today, we are breaking down the documented, historically verified truths behind Hollywood's most famous age gap romances. Are you ready to see the raw reality behind the red carpet smiles? Make sure to subscribe to the archive to follow along, uncover more hidden historical secrets, and support our journey into the untold stories of the elite. The truth about love in Hollywood is always stranger than fiction. Tom Cruise. As the undisputed, gravity-defying king of Hollywood blockbusters, Tom Cruise projects an aura of total, invincible control. Yet, the foundational chapter of his legendary career was heavily dictated by a much older, highly influential woman. In 1987, a 24-year-old Cruise was rapidly ascending the ranks of superstardom following the massive success of Top Gun. Despite having his pick of Hollywood's youngest starlets, he shocked the industry by secretly marrying actress Mimi Rogers, who was 6 years his senior and possessed a much more profound, worldly intelligence. The power dynamic in this marriage was completely unprecedented for a young leading man. Rogers was not just a wife, but a profound ideological mentor. The absolute biggest, most world-altering outcome of this union was Rogers introducing the young, highly impressionable Cruise to the Church of Scientology. This single action permanently shifted the entire trajectory of Cruise's life, his career, and his public persona. While Rogers was an established member of the organization, she ultimately guided him into a world that would eventually become his central identity. However, as Cruise's fame violently eclipsed hers, the marriage fractured. The outcome was a quiet, sudden divorce in 1990. Rogers famously gave a scathing interview to Playboy shortly after, mockingly comparing Cruise's need for spiritual purity to that of a monk, completely shattering his highly cultivated sex symbol image at the time. While their marriage was brief, the older woman he married left a permanent, irreversible mark on his soul, dictating the religious framework he still strictly operates within today. Hugh Jackman. Universally adored for his massive, razor-clawed portrayal of Wolverine, Hugh Jackman's personal life was, for decades, defined by one of the most enduring, aggressively defended age gap marriages in cinematic history. In 1995, Jackman was a complete unknown, a desperately struggling actor, cast in an Australian television series called Corelli. The leading lady of the show was Deborah Lee Furness, a massive, highly respected star in Australia who was 13 years older than him. Jackman was instantly, completely spellbound. Despite the massive imbalance in fame, wealth, and age, they married a year later. For over 27 years, Furness served as the absolute bedrock of Jackman's life, guiding him from a theatrical nobody to a global, multi-million-dollar megastar. She famously advised him against taking the role of Wolverine, a rare misstep in a partnership built on intense mutual reliance. As Jackman's fame exploded, Furness endured decades of vicious, misogynistic tabloid scrutiny from fans who cruelly questioned the validity of their relationship. Jackman fought back aggressively, frequently declaring his absolute devotion to her in public, utilizing his immense platform to shame anyone who disrespected his older wife. They adopted 2 children and presented a united, utterly impenetrable front. However, the ultimate outcome sent shockwaves across the globe. In late 2023, the couple released a devastating joint statement announcing their immediate separation, ending nearly 3 decades of marriage. The unbreakable foundation had quietly crumbled behind closed doors, proving that even the most fiercely defended, historically celebrated age gap unions in Hollywood are not completely immune to the relentless, erosive passing of time. Chris Hemsworth. Standing as the literal embodiment of a Norse god, Chris Hemsworth is one of the most physically imposing and highly paid actors in modern Hollywood. Yet, the towering actor actively chose to anchor his chaotic, hyper-famous life to Elsa Pataky, a deeply grounded Spanish actress and model who is exactly 7 years older than him. When they met in early 2010 through their shared talent representatives, Pataky was already an established, highly successful figure in international cinema, while Hemsworth was just beginning his massive ascent. They married within months of meeting, completely ignoring the industry standard of lengthy, highly publicized engagements. The outcome of their marriage is fundamentally unique in Hollywood. It is a stunning, unmitigated success built entirely on massive personal sacrifice. As Hemsworth's career absolutely exploded with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Pataky willingly paused her own promising acting career, absorbing the immense, exhausting responsibility of raising their 3 children. Recognizing the toxic, highly destructive nature of Los Angeles celebrity culture, the older, wiser Pataky fundamentally spearheaded the family's decision to completely abandon Hollywood. She orchestrated their permanent move to the remote coastal town of Byron Bay, Australia, effectively insulating their marriage from the relentless paparazzi. Hemsworth frequently and openly credits Pataky's maturity and fierce maternal dedication as the sole reason he hasn't lost his mind to fame. By willingly surrendering to the wisdom of an older partner, Hemsworth secured a deeply peaceful, scandal-free existence, proving that stepping away from the spotlight is often the ultimate key to surviving it. Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling is universally recognized as the ultimate brooding cinematic heartthrob, a man whose private life is guarded with an intense, almost militant level of secrecy. Since 2011, his heart has belonged exclusively to Eva Mendes, an actress fiercely protective of her boundaries, who happens to be 7 years older than him. The couple first collided on the highly intense set of The Place Beyond the Pines, where their on-screen chemistry violently translated into a real-world, deeply entrenched romance. While they have never officially confirmed a legal marriage, their partnership is one of the most solid, impenetrable fortresses in the entertainment industry. The outcome of their deeply private union resulted in a massive, fundamental shift in their respective career trajectories. Mendes, who was a globally recognized sex symbol and leading lady, made the profound, deliberate choice to completely step away from acting, entirely dedicating her life to raising their 2 daughters. Gosling, operating at the absolute peak of his fame following hits like La La Land and Barbie, frequently utilizes major award platforms to explicitly honor her massive sacrifice. He famously dedicated his Golden Globe win entirely to her, stating that while he was having the greatest experience on a film set, his older partner was holding down their family and battling her brother's cancer. Their relationship thrives entirely in the shadows, absolutely refusing to offer the public a single glimpse into their domestic life. Mendes's mature, fiercely protective approach to family allowed Gosling to ascend to the absolute top of Hollywood, knowing his reality at home is safely locked away from the destructive glare of fame. Jason Momoa. Towering, rugged, and intensely charismatic, Jason Momoa is universally known as the fierce protector of the seas in Aquaman, but his personal life was entirely defined by a decades-long, deeply spiritual devotion to a woman 12 years his senior. When Momoa was just an 8-year-old boy in Hawaii, he saw Lisa Bonet starring on The Cosby Show and dramatically declared to his mother that he was going to stalk her for the rest of his life and get her. In 2005, through a mutual friend at a jazz club in Los Angeles, the massive actor finally met his childhood idol, Bonet. Completely embodying a highly evolved, bohemian, and intensely private lifestyle, immediately captivated the younger, wilder Momoa. They built an incredibly unique, off-the-grid existence together, having 2 children and officially marrying in a highly secretive ceremony in 2017. Momoa practically worshipped the ground she walked on, frequently calling her a literal goddess and crediting her profound, older wisdom for taming his chaotic, wandering spirit. He even painstakingly restored her very first 1965 Mustang as a testament of his devotion. However, the ultimate outcome was a deeply heartbreaking, public collapse. In early 2022, the couple released a highly philosophical joint statement announcing they were parting ways, citing massive, undeniable shifts in their respective life paths. While their romantic union tragically dissolved, the older Bonet fundamentally shaped Momoa into a mature father and grounded artist. They continue to maintain a fiercely protective, deeply connected co-parenting relationship, proving that the end of a marriage does not inherently mean the complete destruction of a family. Ashton Kutcher. Ashton Kutcher's transition from a goofy, prank-pulling sitcom star to a serious tech billionaire was forged in the absolute white-hot fire of one of the most heavily scrutinized, highly scandalous age-gap marriages in modern history. In 2003, a 25-year-old Kutcher absolutely stunned the world when he began openly dating Demi Moore, an established cinematic icon who was a staggering 15 years older than him. The paparazzi completely lost their minds. The term cougar was essentially weaponized in the media to describe their highly public, incredibly affectionate dynamic. Despite relentless predictions of an immediate breakup, they married in 2005. Kutcher dramatically stepped into the role of a deeply committed stepfather to Moore's 3 daughters with Bruce Willis, rapidly forcing him to mature far beyond his actual years. For a time, they were the absolute pioneers of the celebrity social media age, utilizing Twitter to project an image of a flawless, deeply modern romance. However, the outcome of this intensely publicized union was a terrifyingly public, completely devastating implosion. The marriage ended in an agonizing 2011 divorce following highly credible, extremely detailed allegations that Kutcher had repeatedly cheated on the older actress. Years later, Moore released a brutally honest, highly explosive memoir that stripped away all the glamour, detailing the extreme psychological torment of their marriage, including allegations of forced threesomes and devastating miscarriages. The relationship that initially elevated Kutcher's Hollywood status ultimately ended up severely damaging his public reputation for years, serving as a brutal reminder of the toxic, highly destructive nature of intense public scrutiny. Nick Jonas. As a massive former Disney Channel idol and 1/3 of a globally dominant boy band, Nick Jonas lived his entire youth under the relentless, screaming gaze of teenage fans. Yet, when it came time to build a permanent life, the youngest Jonas brother aggressively pursued a woman possessing massive global power and a decade of extra life experience. In 2018, he shockingly proposed to Priyanka Chopra, a former Miss World, and the absolute reigning queen of Bollywood, who was exactly 10 years his senior. Their relationship moved at a terrifyingly rapid, completely undeniable pace. They were engaged after only 2 months of officially dating and executed a massive, multi-day, multi-million-dollar wedding extravaganza in India that completely dominated global headlines. The internet was immediately, viciously skeptical, with major publications actively publishing highly insulting articles attempting to label Chopra as a global scam artist manipulating a younger pop star. The couple faced intense, deeply rooted cultural and ageist backlash. However, the ultimate outcome of this union is a massive, completely undeniable victory that silenced every single critic. The older, highly strategic Chopra introduced Jonas to an entirely new level of global business acumen and cross-cultural influence. Together, they have built a massive, highly lucrative brand portfolio and welcomed a daughter via surrogate. Far from being a manipulated victim, Jonas openly thrives under the intense, grounded leadership of his older wife, proving that true compatibility completely annihilates numerical age gaps and geographical borders. Tim Robbins. Academy Award-winning actor and director Tim Robbins was half of one of the most intensely political, fiercely intelligent, and enduring partnerships in Hollywood history, deliberately anchoring his life to Susan Sarandon, a cinematic powerhouse exactly 12 years older than him. They collided on the set of the highly acclaimed baseball film Bull Durham in 1988. Sarandon was already an established, deeply respected leading lady and a single mother, while Robbins was a rising, highly talented character actor. Ignoring the massive age gap and the traditional Hollywood pressure to legally wed, they actively chose to remain unmarried partners for over 2 decades. They built a massively influential, highly progressive dynasty, welcoming 2 sons and frequently utilizing their immense combined star power to protest political injustices, loudly opposing wars and advocating for human rights on global platforms. Sarandon's older, fiercely unapologetic activism fundamentally molded Robbins' own highly political public persona. They appeared completely invincible, a true intellectual anomaly in a sea of shallow celebrity flings. Therefore, the outcome of their legendary relationship was one of the most deeply shocking, completely unexpected splits in the modern era. In the summer of 2009, the couple quietly, abruptly separated, without offering any massive public explanations. The sudden death of their 21-year partnership sent literal shockwaves through the industry, a deeply sobering reminder that even the most philosophically aligned, battle-tested, and intellectually superior Hollywood unions can ultimately run their natural course. Guy Ritchie. British filmmaker Guy Ritchie exploded onto the cinematic scene with highly kinetic, ultra-violent, hyper-masculine gangster films, projecting a gritty, working-class London toughness. Yet, his personal life became globally defined by a highly chaotic, heavily scrutinized marriage to Madonna, the undisputed queen of pop, who was a full 10 years older than him. They met at a highly exclusive dinner party in 1999, instantly clashing cultures. She was the ultimate American pop icon, obsessed with constant reinvention, and he was the fiercely stubborn British director, deeply loyal to his local pub culture. Despite the massive cultural and age disparities, they married in an intensely secretive, highly guarded Scottish castle in 2000. For 8 years, Ritchie lived entirely in the blinding, suffocating shadow of his older wife's monumental global fame. The power dynamic was incredibly lopsided. Madonna dictated their highly rigid, macrobiotic diet, their intense fitness routines, and their spiritual devotion to Kabbalah. The outcome of this massive clash of egos was a highly toxic, incredibly bitter collapse. The marriage ended in a devastating 2008 divorce that reportedly cost Madonna a staggering payout of between $76 million and $92 million, making it one of the most expensive celebrity divorce settlements in British history. Richie, utterly exhausted by the relentless paparazzi and the suffocating control of his older partner, aggressively retreated back into his gritty cinematic roots. The marriage proved that extreme wealth and blinding fame are absolutely useless when fundamentally opposing lifestyles and unyielding egos are forced to share the exact same roof. David Arquette. Inheriting the legacy of a deeply respected, highly eccentric acting dynasty, David Arquette was known as the wild, unpredictable court jester of 1990s indie cinema. His life violently shifted when he was cast in the 1996 mega-hit horror film Scream, where he met Courtney Cox, an actress 7 years his senior. At the exact time of their meeting, Cox was starring on Friends, essentially making her one of the most highly paid, globally recognized, and powerful women on television. Arquette, deeply insecure and battling massive substance abuse issues, was instantly drawn to Cox's mature, highly organized, and intensely maternal energy. They married in 1999, and for over a decade, Cox served as the absolute grounding anchor to Arquette's highly chaotic, deeply erratic lifestyle. She forced him into highly necessary periods of sobriety and helped him navigate the terrifying pressures of Hollywood fame. However, the ultimate outcome was a deeply painful, heavily drawn-out realization that their fundamental natures were entirely incompatible. The older, highly structured Cox could simply no longer act as a mother figure to a husband completely consumed by his own demons. They officially filed for divorce in 2012, finalizing it in 2013. Yet, unlike massive Hollywood explosions, their outcome birthed an incredibly rare, highly successful business partnership. They completely stripped away the romantic failure, actively maintaining their massive Coquette Productions company and continuing to successfully co-parent their daughter, proving that the end of an age gap romance can occasionally evolve into a highly mature, immensely lucrative friendship. Nick Offerman. Universally idolized for his fiercely masculine, deadpan portrayal of Ron Swanson on Parks and Recreation, Nick Offerman's real-life existence is entirely driven by an intense, overwhelming adoration for his wife, comedic genius Megan Mullally, who is exactly 11 years older than him. Their origin story is deeply rooted in struggling theatrical artistry. They met in 2000 while performing in an obscure play in Los Angeles. At the time, Mullally was already achieving massive, global television fame and significant wealth through her iconic role on Will and Grace, while Offerman was practically broke, sleeping on a futon and working as a freelance carpenter just to survive. The massive age and financial gap never deterred them. They married in 2003. Mullally completely believed in the younger actor's deeply weird, hyper-specific comedic voice, aggressively using her massive industry influence to secure him minor roles on her show, ultimately paving the way for his massive breakthrough years later. The outcome of this union is arguably the absolute healthiest, most fiercely joyous partnership in modern entertainment. They completely actively reject Hollywood drama, preferring to build wooden canoes, solve massive jigsaw puzzles, and perform highly eccentric live comedy tours together. By completely surrendering his ego and allowing his older, vastly more successful partner to fundamentally support him during his darkest, poorest days, Offerman secured an unbreakable, deeply hilarious, and profoundly successful marriage that completely shatters every single negative stereotype associated with massive age gaps. Bart Freundlich. In an industry completely notorious for massive, ego-driven explosions and rapid divorces, director Bart Freundlich and Academy Award-winning actress Julianne Moore have quietly executed one of the most masterful, enduring age gap marriages in existence. In 1996, a 26-year-old Freundlich was attempting to direct his very first major feature film, The Myth of Fingerprints. He cast Julianne Moore, an already highly established, fiercely respected cinematic talent, who was exactly 9 years his senior. The power dynamic on set was incredibly precarious. A young, completely unproven director attempting to guide an older, vastly experienced leading lady. Yet, the professional collaboration immediately ignited a deeply intense, highly private personal romance. They welcomed 2 children before officially marrying in the heavily guarded privacy of their Greenwich Village home in 2003. The outcome of their relationship is a masterclass in aggressive, unapologetic normalcy. They completely actively shun the toxic, hyper-visible Los Angeles celebrity circuit, choosing instead to live an intensely grounded, deeply ordinary life in New York City. The older, highly strategic Moore has frequently starred in her younger husband's subsequent films, completely blending their immense creative passions with their domestic reality. Freundlich never allowed the massive, blinding scale of his wife's global fame or her older age to intimidate his own creative vision. By keeping their names entirely out of the tabloids and prioritizing absolute, unwavering loyalty over Hollywood glitz, they built an indestructible, 3-decade-long empire of quiet, undeniable love. Aaron Taylor Johnson. Aaron Taylor Johnson's marriage is currently the most heavily debated, intensely scrutinized, and aggressively controversial age gap relationship on the internet. In 2009, an 18-year-old Taylor Johnson auditioned for the starring role in the film Nowhere Boy, directed by Sam Taylor Wood, a highly established, massively powerful British artist and filmmaker who was exactly 42 years old. A staggering 23-year age gap. The incredibly vast difference in life experience and industry power immediately ignited massive, relentless public outcry, with the media and fans aggressively attempting to label the dynamic as highly predatory and manipulative. Despite the vicious, non-stop global scrutiny, the young actor fiercely defended his older partner. They married in 2012, both actively choosing to hyphenate their last names as a massive, public symbol of absolute equality. The outcome of this heavily criticized union completely defies the internet's darkest predictions. They have remained fiercely, aggressively loyal for over a decade, welcoming 2 daughters together, while Aaron also actively stepped in as a stepfather to her older children. The young actor, now highly favored to take on the legendary role of James Bond, completely credits his older wife's intense emotional maturity and fierce artistic guidance for shielding him from the deeply toxic, highly destructive nature of young Hollywood stardom. He constantly, aggressively shuts down interviewers who attempt to question the validity of his marriage, proving that an intense, unshakable soul connection can completely overpower a 2-decade age difference and an entire world of relentless, screaming critics. Tom Kaulitz. As the highly successful, heavily tattooed guitarist for the massive German rock band Tokyo Hotel, Tom Kaulitz lived his entire youth immersed in the wild, chaotic, and entirely predictable world of touring rock stars. However, his life violently shifted gears when he actively pursued Heidi Klum, the undisputed, globally recognized supermodel and television mogul who is exactly 16 years older than him. They met in 2018 through a mutual television network connection, and the chemistry was completely explosive and undeniable. Despite Klum's highly publicized history of high-profile divorces, the young rocker was entirely undeterred by her massive global fame or her 4 children. They married just a year later in a highly lavish, wildly romantic ceremony on a luxury yacht in Italy. The outcome of this massive age gap union is a deeply joyful, heavily publicized, and incredibly physical romance. Cowlitz seamlessly stepped into the role of an incredibly supportive, deeply involved stepfather, providing the stable, grounded family structure that the older Klum had desperately been searching for her entire life. They frequently flood their massive social media platforms with highly affectionate, unapologetically PDA-heavy content, completely ignoring the relentless internet trolls who try to shame the older supermodel for loving a younger man. The younger Cowlitz fundamentally brought a highly necessary, chaotic sense of fun and pure, unadulterated joy back into the deeply structured, business-oriented life of the older mogul, creating an incredibly vibrant, fiercely loving modern family that completely writes its own rules.